Is it time to do the unthinkable and bench LaNorris Sellers? No is the answer, but there do need to be some changes made. And I'm going to tell you why I would feel comfortable with making some significant changes, especially on the offense, and what those should be. Locked On Gamecocks starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. Hope everyone's having a fantastic day. We're recording this Tuesday night, probably coming out Wednesday morning, what have you. Got a new camera angle. We got a whole bunch of changes we're going to talk about, including the ones to the start of the show. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to everyone making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, guys, we're a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. We've gained over 100 followers in the past day. I can't say thank you enough to everyone that has started watching the show and all that good stuff. We appreciate it. The best way to help us grow, continue to make comments, banter in the comments as well. Tell me I'm right, wrong, stupid, ugly, whatever you want to do. Not ugly. That would hurt my feelings. But your opinions on what I have to say, your opinions that you have in general that you want us to talk about, would love to hear from all of you guys. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Remember, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Get in the game with Game Time. So somebody posed this question, and I thought it was very stupid. But I also, the more I thought about it, thought there's some part of it that I would go into and talk about on the show. Benching LaNorris Sellers. Now, I think that's a horrifically bad idea. But like the point I think that can be made from that sentiment is there are changes that need to be made. There's changes that need to be made, not wholesale necessarily, but I think that you've reached the point of the season where some interesting parts of this day and age of college football are going to start rearing their heads. And I was at the Brian Kelly press conference the other day. I told you guys, you guys all know my background, what I do for the day job. And he brought up a point about a couple players that were starters at LSU last year that haven't really played as much. And this hasn't happened at South Carolina yet, but it's just something I thought was interesting. And somebody said, hey, this player hasn't played for this many games. What's the deal with that? What's going on? And he said, yeah, we're trying to preserve their red shirt. So they have another year of eligibility. And so we've put them in 3 games. We don't want them to play a 4th yet. And that's why we've kind of held them back a little bit. I don't know if you're going to see that with a bunch of players from South Carolina. I do think that you're in a situation now where and Beamer's fired up, as we've talked about in his press conferences and how he feels about where the season is heading or how it's gone so far, especially probably more so how it's gone so far. And that's good. You want your coach to be fired up on that kind of stuff. I've already told you my opinions on some of the stuff he said. It doesn't mean it's the meme of the guy holding the umbrella of the person he's mad at in the rain. It doesn't mean I'm going to stop caring, just like you guys aren't. And so I think when you talk about moving forward, some of the stuff that could happen, I think it's important to look at what are some things that are going to start facing this team. You're going to have kids at the portal. You're going to have kids that want to redshirt and save another year. Are you going to have games where you don't have your full 85-man roster because 10, 15 of those guys want to hit the portal and they want to maintain another year of eligibility and don't really want to come in off the bench? That's a really valid concern that college football coaches are going to have now. The other part, though, going back to LaNorris Sellers, he's not played well. He's not played well, and he's had some bad games. And I am firmly in the camp that this is not his fault. I don't think that this is a situation where it's like, oh man, but like LaNorris is the reason they're struggling so bad. He's had some struggles, but there's no part of me that thinks that, oh man, well, if he just did this one more thing better or this thing, right, then it's going to turn some key or wave a magic wand, and this pile of crap that's been the offense is all of a sudden going to turn into, I don't know, a shiny jewel. So bad metaphor. Wish I didn't go there. But I do think we saw Cutter Woods come in last week and he looked good. I think there's no part of me that thinks he should go out there and start at all. There's no part of me that thinks that he should be in competition for the starting job. This is LaNorris's job and it's LaNorris's team. I do think that you have to start figuring out a way to get creative offensively. And if that is bringing LaNorris Sellers out on a play and putting in a package for someone else, whether it's a wildcat, whether it's throwing the football, it's something. I know this sounds crazy because he is your best player, and I have really been banging the drum for like, well, why would you take the ball out of his hands? Why are you not running the football? So maybe I'm being contradictory to what I've been saying all along. I don't know. But I also think that you have to make wholesale identity changes on the offense, not wholesale changes across the board, fire everybody and everyone's got to go. There's one person I think that needs to go, and I just firmly believe that. But you guys already know that. I do think that you have to start figuring out ways to be more creative and figuring out, hey, this just isn't working. Like, this is not working. And if I'm Shane Beamer, I'm going into practice and I'm saying this to everyone, and maybe he has, and I'm saying no one has earned their right to start on this team based on the results we've gotten, and I am making sure that every practice has a competitive spirit and a competitive mindset to where every single day you feel like you want the person that's going out there and competing as hard as they can. And the player that wants to be out there the most and is performing at their best is the one that's playing at each position. There's only a few players on this team that I think right now have earned a starting job that are like unmovable and unbenchable. I think one of those players is what do you call it? Is LaNorris Sellers, like I said. And I think there's a couple others I would make case for Casey Henry, even though he's been out. But I think that you open this up and Josiah Thompson, I don't think you can afford to take him off the offensive line. But I do think at some point you need to send a message, at least to an opposing defense, and say, hey, we're going to do something different. Maybe it's putting him from left tackle to right tackle. Maybe it's coming out, like I said, in a wildcat formation. Maybe it's doing like a jet sweep, which I said is a joke. But also, like, I don't think it's a bad option to have. I think you need to figure out something that is going to be unique and different and not what we have seen over and over. Like, when you have this many losses in a row and you have this many disappointing outcomes in a row where you have shown zero ability to be different from an identity standpoint, from a production standpoint, and from an execution standpoint, like, most importantly, you also have a massive opportunity to kind of reinvent yourself. And I know that last year, that's what they were able to do under Dowell Loggins. I don't see those changes and the spark or the switch just being, turned on, where it's like you make all of a sudden you're firing on all cylinders on offense. I just don't see that happening. I don't see this weekend against Alabama going necessarily well. But as I keep saying, all I feel like we're begging for at some point is tangible change and evidential proof of an effort and intent to change and change for the better. And I listen, I said in the postgame and I laughed at myself for even bringing it up. But I do think, dude, run a jet sweep, run an end around, run a reverse, run, like, I think they ran one last week, but like just run something that we have not seen yet that is going to show not just the fans, but opposing defenses, hey, you're going to have to start preparing for more things. Because right now, the number of plays they're having to defend and concepts and schemes, not a ton. And if you are, not a ton you have to be worried about. You guys and I both know that. All right, we're going to continue on the show. We got a good episode for you today. When we come back, we're going to talk more about some of the players I feel like that you can depend on, because I feel like you're also at a point in the season where who do you know for sure when you need a certain down and distance or you need a tackle or whatever that you can depend on. We're going to talk about that, some of the players that have stood out and some of the players that, quite frankly, need to step up. Before we do that, we are going to take a quick little break, and we'll be back with more Locked On Gamecocks after this. All right, we're back. Before we get started in the second part of the show, I do want to give a quick shout out to some of our friends of the show and pay some bills. And first, I want to talk about our friends at Monarch Money. Listen, let's be honest. Most of us can't name all of our financial accounts, let alone what their net worth is. Between 401ks, savings, investments, it's easy to lose track, and that can mean leaving money on the table. Just today, I filed my taxes late and just got all my money debited today from the government, which was a terrible day, I think, as every April 15th or sometimes October 15th can be. But there's one friend that I feel like I can lean on when I need to make sure I have all of my financial stability actually stable. And that's why I started using Monarch, all-in-one personal finances and an all-in-one tool that brings you entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Do not let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarch.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarch.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Also, want to give a shout out to our friends at FanDuel, who are also sponsoring today's episode. The NFL season is here. NFL has an offer you don't want to miss, or FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet. Put down $5. If it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. It makes watching games even more fun. You have up-to-the-minute stats, you have up-to-the-minute odds, and up-to-the-minute totals that are right at your fingertips, and you can make the best, I would say, smart bet in addition to bets in general with the help of FanDuel. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Shout out to George Springer last night for the Blue Jays for hitting a 3-run bomb down 3-1, because me and the missus in our joint FanDuel account had the Blue Jays in a money line. So that was good. Anyway, so here's the other part I want to talk about. And it got me thinking with the whole concept of Sellers, whether he should start or not. And again, I just think that's a crazy notion in general. I know there's some people that are frustrated with him, but there's no way you take your best player off of this team off the field and you think it's going to somehow get miraculously better. I will also say it sparked the idea of some of the questions I have of just like, who are you able to depend on? So I'm going to go through some of the numbers here real quick and tell you what we're looking at, offensively and defensively. And I'm going to give you a couple players on each that I feel like are your players that are performing best, and some other guys that need to like show up immediately if they want to keep their starting jobs or move on. So from a rushing standpoint, Faison leads the team in rushing. I was one of the idiots that thought he was going to be good for maybe 1,000 yards based on what he did in previous stops. He leads the team in rushing with only 281 yards. He's getting 9 attempts a game, averaging 40 yards per game. It's terrible. Averaging 4.39 yards per carry as well. He's the only player on the team that is averaging over, what do you call it? 4 yards a carry. Besides Jordan Howell, who has gone missing 7 attempts in 30 yards in only one game, which is kind of shocking. Also, LaNorris Sellers leading the team in carries, 84 for 108. LaNorris Sellers, who is one of the best threats you have in all of college football. Last year, we talked about what he did numbers-wise when he was in his first year as a starter. He finished the season in 2024 with 166 carries. So almost half or almost double what he's had now. You're at half that total for 674 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 4 yards a carry. This year, 84 carries, so half of last year's, for 108 yards. Almost 500 yards less for 1.29 yards per carry and 1 touchdown. That's got to change immediately. But Faison leads there. Fuller is second with 38 carries for 151 yards. Attaway, 35 carries for 119 as well. You want to look at receiving and seeing what some of the players are doing there. Vandrevius Jacobs has been great. 21 receptions, 343 yards, 2 touchdowns. Him and Nick Harbor both with over 16 yards per catch, which is great, like fantastic. Harbor, 17 catches, 278 yards, also 2 touchdowns. Donovan Murph, 7 catches, but 118 yards, also over 16 yards per catch. Then you talk about Brady Hunt, 13 receptions, 115 yards. Brian Rose, 10 catches for 89 yards. I think one of the main problems here is you've got 4 players that have over 100 yards receiving in total. And what you don't see this year is, Mazio Bennett has 7 catches for 50 yards. Jaden Sellers has 6 for 57. Jared Brown, going into his senior year, 3 catches, 47 yards. And then you want to look at some of just from a target standpoint of where some of those players are. And just from who's being targeted most from LaNorris, I think that's where you start from is like where one of your other issues in the passing game is you're not really explosive in any sort of way at all. But the past several years, the tight end position has been utilized and almost prioritized more than anyone else, especially in 2024, right? Like that's where your leading pass catcher was for the entire season when you had so much offensive success, especially in comparison to this year's team. This year, you don't really have that. And you're also not really making a huge attempt at trying to even get that. And that I think is kind of surprising to me, if I'm being honest. From a target standpoint, Harbor has 17 catches. He has 28 targets on the year. Vandrevius has 26 targets, so he has 21 catches, so a much higher receiving rate. Brian Rose, 16 targets. And then you have Faison with 13, Brady Hunt, 16. Mazio has 13 targets, only 7 catches. Donovan Murphy has 12. But that's the entire list of players that have more than 10 targets. You have 7 players on the year that have more than 10 targets. And then just the surprise. I mean, like Malik Clark, 1 target all year. Jordan Gidron, 1 target all year. I know like Michael Smith's gone. He had 2. They have Isaiah Gustave listed as a tight end. Jared Brown, 5 targets on the year. Jaden Sellers, 6 targets. Man, I just had such higher hopes for that receiver class that came in. I think the other part of it too, and we'll talk about offense first, and then we'll do defense to close it out. But offensively, I think you look at this offensive line and just from whether it's a PFF standpoint or sacks allowed or anything like that, like however you want to look at it, like however you want to look at this. And if you want to look at this from a standpoint of let's look at blocking and the offensive line, where they have ranked. The pressures allowed on the season. Boaz Stanley has 13 that leads the team. Josiah Thompson has 13. So they're tied. Tree has 11, and Trevon Baugh has 10. Those are pressures allowed. Sacks allowed. Now it says here you've only allowed 13, which means the other 13 that have happened are on LaNorris Sellers because you've given up 26 on the year. That's bad. I mean, that's regression. That is a regression from what he did a year ago and should not be happening. But nonetheless, you've got Marquis Anderson responsible for 1, Russell Faison responsible for 1. That was in the Missouri game. Josiah Thompson 2, Trevon Baugh 2, Boaz Stanley 3, and Roddy Newsom Jr. 3. The fact that you're giving up 6 sacks of the 26 are from your center position just shows you that I mean, like, why would you almost get under center at that point? Because whatever you like, if you're backpedaling, you might as well just keep going. Like if you're taking a snap and backpedaling, you might as well just keep backpedaling for your life, like LaNorris had to do this year. So I think you make some changes up front from a standpoint of these. Like I know Marquis Anderson's been out, but in 3 games, I mean he's your lowest graded pass blocker at 22.8. Trevon Baugh 53.5. You don't have you have no one that has taken any significant snaps on this team this season that has, I mean, Jatiah Shivers, 27.6 rating for pass blocking. Then you have guys like Shed Surratt and Tree that are 75 and 75.7. But everyone else, from just a pass blocking grade, Boaz Stanley is under 60. So is Rodney Newsom. So is Trevon Baugh. So is Josiah Thompson. And to not see Josiah Thompson, I mean, take a step forward this year, I think has been a massive part of this failure. Now, maybe that improves this week or in general as the season goes on. We did see that happen last year. Maybe that improves with Sean Elliott as the O-line coach. I don't know. But if I'm looking at who I can depend on in this offense, is there a guy? Is it is there a case right now to be made that outside of Andrevius Jacobs, it's Jaden Sellers, maybe Nick Harbor? I mean, like in that order, I don't, and a lot of that's being a prisoner of the moment about what Jaden Sellers just did in that last game. But my God, I mean, it just shows you how like clunky and inefficient, and from week to week, it's like a new cast or a new team that shows up, and it just makes it even more frustrating. We're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about the defensive side of the ball. I mean, I just maintain from the offensive side, I don't think you can take Sellers out. I think Faison's still your best back, but I think at some point also you figure out you're not giving more than 10 carries to any of those backs. Maybe it's a situation where like Rocket Sanders was, where it's like, hey man, if you keep feeding that guy, they're going to get better. I don't think that any of those guys are as talented as Rocket Sanders was, and they're not going to have that kind of production. But I do know that these 9 carries that you're giving them a game aren't really paying off. So if you're going to commit to the run, maybe you commit to one person. Maybe like you should have done against LSU, ride the hot hand with Fuller, or in this past week, ride it with Faison. I don't know, but it's like every single time they start getting any sort of success, which has been very few moments this season, then it's like you go away from it completely. So I don't really, from like offensively, I don't know who you can depend on. I don't think you can take out Sellers, but I don't know from a passing game standpoint or anything else, who else that guy can really feel like, hey, on 3rd and 6, this is where I'm going, and I feel good about that. I mean, because now you're at the point of the season too where like people know about Vandrevius Jacobs, and he's burned enough people to where if you can seal him or seal off one side of the field where he's at, maybe Harbor is not going to hurt you, but like, you know, I think 17 catches on 28 targets, not a great percentage. So I don't know offensively. Defensively, we'll get back to that when we come back right after this. All right, closing out today's show. Before we do, I want to give a quick little shout out to our friends at Game Time. You guys heard me talk about this before, and there's some fun stuff coming. Tonight's a big basketball event at Colonial Life. I think Waka Flocka's there, which is pretty awesome. And there's some more stuff that should help lessen and dull the pain from this football season that's been coming up. And also, you still got Alabama coming to town. I'm going to tell you tomorrow. I don't love the chances of winning, but there's also some positive things to look at in terms of just like the track record DeBoer's had against ranked opponents versus unranked opponents and sleeping on teams. I know it's homecoming. I'm sure the crowd will be there. 2:30 start, so it's not super early. And we'll see. And also, it's the best fans in America, so I'm sure they'll be there. But real quick, I want to say a quick shout out to our friends at Game Time. If you are going to the game this weekend, make sure if you're looking for tickets, you do it with our friends over at Game Time. College football is back. I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, rivalries, energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Sometimes, guys, getting the tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself, with endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout, all the above. That's why I use Game Time. It's the only app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. The best thing that Game Time does, in a long line of things, one, incredible customer service, better than any other ticketing app or platform around. And that is not just me saying it. That is, if you have something come up 24 hours for the concert and you or game or whatever else you have tickets to, and you can't go, they will give you 100% of your money back. And it's incredible customer service, and no one else is doing things like them. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, who can you depend on defensively? I think there's more answers here. Dylan Stewart's banged up, but just like looking at some of the numbers of the season, who are some of your leaders are from a tackling standpoint. I think the linebackers have been good. There hasn't been a very high missed tackle rate from them as well. Fred Johnson is second in this team in tackles with 33. Justin Okoronkwo, the transfer, he's been great with 32. But here's one thing I do notice, okay? 3 of your top 5 tacklers on the team are defensive backs. Anytime you have a defensive back leading the team in tackles, it's not always a great sign. Anytime you have 3 of the 5, that's also not a great sign. That means people are breaking through constantly. You look at last year's team and where the top 5 players were. 3 linebackers, Demetrius Knight, Bam Martin Scott, Debo Williams. They were 2 through 4. And then TJ Sanders, the defensive tackle, had 50. That's insane. He was 5th. Now, a year later, you've got a DB leading it, a DB in 3rd, and a DB in 5th. And that is not where you want to be as a defense. Now, from a standpoint of who you can depend on, Dylan Stewart, I think he struggled more not having Kyle Kennard across from him, which I think was very obvious. Anytime you have the SEC Defensive Player of the Year gone, it's not like you're going to replace him with another one like that necessarily, unless it is Stewart. But I think Brian Thomas Jr. has been fantastic. I think all the edge rushers have actually been really good. I really do. I think from a pressure rate, what they've been able to do, generating pressure, all of those things, I think they have been arguably the best unit on the field, if we're being honest. I really do believe that. From pressures this year, let's take a look at it real quick. Dylan Stewart and Brian Thomas both with 20 plus. Then you have JT Gear with 9. Desmond has 8, and then it's a series of a couple defensive linemen. Not a ton from the linebacker core there, but from a tackle standpoint, we just talked about that. The missed tackle percentage is not as bad. I think Brandon Cisse, I don't know. I'm tired. I messed up his name. I'm sure I did. He has been. Why can't I think of it too? I either need a coffee or another Celsius or something. He has been, I think, one of the better defensive backs that you've had this season. Like I said, I think the linebackers have played pretty well, and the defense really hasn't been the main part of the problem. There's just been times where they've struggled at run fits, and then also being so thin and banged up, it's hard for them to figure out from a depth standpoint who's going to be able to step in and fill gaps and all those kind of things. So I do think that there's been some players that have been really good. I think there's others that have been kind of what's the best way to put it? Liabilities at time. I think that's a fair thing to say at this point. I think there have been some players that have been flat out a liability, whether it be in the run game or the pass game, defensively. Who do I trust the most? I think from a linebacker standpoint, I love what Okoronkwo has done, and I love that the Fred Johnson. I think Fred Johnson still has one of the highest ceilings of any player on this team, and will be even better next year. But then I started looking at some of the other stuff defensively and just like in coverage and all that kind of stuff. Who has been really good there? I thought that would be the strongest unit coming into the season, and it just hasn't. So, Gerald Kilgore, Vakari Swain, obviously, is a guy I think that you can always lean on, not just in coverage, but also with how good he's been, obviously, in the return game. But you just need something, man. You need something to get back into feeling better about where you are. And I think that's what this team needs more than anything. And, like DQ Smith, I don't think he's having a bad season. He's only allowed 108 total yards receiving, but it's on 10 targets, 8 receptions. 15 has just been awesome. Transfer from NC State, 22 targets, only 10 receptions. I mean, that's incredible. Some of them have been, for 159 yards, but the adjusted depth of target on that too is like around 15 yards. Not a ton of yak. I think he's been really good as well. So, I think that's about where I draw the line, because I thought the secondary was going to be something that would be the staple of this defense. Judge Collier, 11 targets this year, allowed 9 receptions, 113 yards, 54 yards after the catch. There's been key pieces that have not been great this year on both sides of the ball, but defensively, especially when you already knew you were going to be that thin. It's kind of some of the underperformance has come in the form of players that you really couldn't afford to have it in. And like, if you have a guy like Dylan Stewart go down, we all know how big of an impact that's going to have. Well, if you're already thin, and then the players that you're having that you can't afford to lose go down, the players that you need to step up aren't being able to make plays. It's a recipe for disaster, and that's where they're at. All right. That is all with the negativity for today. And also kind of some fair assessment, I think, maybe. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you again to everyone that's made Locked On Gamecocks either your first listen, second listen, or wherever. But also subscribe to the channel, because it's been a lot of growth over the past couple of days. And I'm hoping that at some point we're going to start having some more growth after some wins. So make sure you tune in tomorrow. We'll have another episode for you as well, starting to preview the Bama game. And until then, go Cox.